Um, when I was a child, I'm going to share something a little personal. My parents got divorced, and my dad ended up converting to a different religion. And that meant for me that for the next 10 years, we ended up having very challenging conversations about our faith. They were deep and divisive, and we couldn't really agree on anything. He couldn't convince me to come to his side, and I couldn't convince him to come to his side, or he couldn't convince, vice versa. And so it just went on and on like that for 10 years. Now, I know I'm not the only one in this room who's had these kinds of conversations or disagreements. I'm at a family gathering, for goodness sake, so I'm guessing I'm not the only one. They're happening inside of families, friendships, and, it's certainly happening at a global scale as well. They're painful, and they're often very unproductive. Which is why I know it's so tempting to look at conflict around the world today and to just wish we could all just get along. If people just wouldn't be so set in their ways and in their beliefs and would just give a little and not, maybe believe so strongly in something, maybe we could all be at peace, right? And I get it, totally get it. But I've spent the last 20 years working in conflict zones all over the world, from Iraq, I just got back last week, to Sudan, so many places, even in the United States Congress. So, that was a big one. So I know, I know what conflict looks like. And this is why I think that we've been looking at peace and the peace process the wrong way. Because contrary to popular belief, agreeing with one another on our deepest differences isn't required for peace. Shocking. And peace itself isn't just the absence of conflict or violence. Shocking again. Peace is so much more. I came to this realization through my father, and when I finally learned how to talk with him. You see, he didn't force me to change my beliefs, and in that process, I learned not to be afraid of being challenged. In fact, I became probably stronger in my position, but something beautiful happened and we became closer. And so through that experience, I finally kind of got it. There's something different here. You see, peace requires pluralism, which is this active engagement with people that are very different from us. It's recognizing the value that others bring to the table and to our world, regardless of their differences. And so as soon as I got there, it just became a little bit more obvious. You see, when we're disagreeing, like I did with my dad, there's going to be friction and there's going to be disagreement, and yes, there will be conflict. But when we're disagreeing, we're free to express those ideas and beliefs that make life meaningful and that we hold dear. And it's only when everyone has that freedom and respects that freedom for others that we can finally feel safe and find peace. And so that's when it really became obvious for me. And so basically after a long time defending religious freedom in American foreign policy, I ended up starting an organization called Hardwired. I had become passionate about religious freedom from a young age, and obviously through the experience with my father. But I saw conflict all around the world emerging over religious and ethnic differences, and I realized I wanted to do something to help. I wanted to be part of the solution. So after working in, Congress and all these other places, I started Hardwired, and Hardwired works to help countries around the world who don't have the kind of freedom that we have to have these conversations or even conversions, and where people are living in severe persecution and oppression because they don't have a culture of pluralism. We basically help build those cultures of pluralism there. Now, in America and much of the Western world, we have a culture of pluralism where basically we can coexist with different beliefs. And we have laws that protect our freedom of thought and belief. But in much of the world, like over 80% of the world, that just doesn't exist. Pluralism isn't practiced and it's not understood. So in those contexts, Hardwired is literally working to change that. And this is critical. And what's interesting is that, well, few places give me more hope than Iraq. And I know that might sound surprising, but let me share with you what's happening. So I was in Iraq 10 years ago when a genocide happened. I was actually pregnant with my first daughter. And literally ancient civilizations that had been there for so long were overnight destroyed by ISIS. They destroyed the communities and they destroyed their religious, cultural symbols and artifacts overnight. For 4 years, ISIS took the children and the curriculum and they rewrote it to teach children how to hate and kill people who believe differently from them. Now, these children weren't, as we say, hardwired to hurt anyone. Just like every other human, they were hardwired to be free, like you and me. But if left to themselves without intervention, these children would have grown up thinking that the horrific teachings of ISIS were the only thoughts and ideas worth value. And if that would have happened as a result, then they would have repeated the same cycle of violence they've been stuck in and become victims of. So Hardwired began working in refugee camps and in schools across Iraq to help these children begin to think differently about themselves and about the people that they had been told to hate. And it's working, and what's happening is so inspiring. I just want to share one of my favorite stories from Mosul. And I was just there last week, and it's so encouraging. One of the teachers that was trained in our program had shared a story about a bunch of boys that came up to him after he shared our lesson on pluralism. And the boys congratulated him and thanked him for helping them win their soccer game. And he thought, well, gosh, I mean, he's an engineer. He's not a coach. So he was a little surprised by the fact that they gave him the credit for their soccer game. But he said, well, what happened? And they said, well, before the lesson, we had rejected this kid in our group because he was from a different religion. And we didn't want him to participate, but we were losing so badly. And after the lesson, we realized we should probably include him. So we did, and it turned out he was really good, and he helped us win. And thank you, you did it. And he's like, okay. But you know what's so funny about that simple little story of soccer is that they'll never forget what it felt like to include somebody that they had rejected simply because he believed differently from them, probably for the rest of their lives. And just so you don't think it's only about the power of sports in transforming people and their opinions, let me tell you another story. When I was in Mosul a year ago, all of the schools that we're working with across northern Iraq are performing a play on pluralism. And at one of the performances I got to witness, a mother shared with me how she didn't want her daughter to participate in the play. And we asked why, of course, and she said, well, then I read the play, and I read that my daughter was going to be the little banana in the play. And in the play, and in the story, the little banana gets hurt and gets bruised, as bananas do. And then these apples and oranges come and help the little banana heal. And then the mother shared with us that during the conflict, her family had been part of ISIS, and her sister lost her arms, and her brother lost his legs. And no one came to help them. And so I always get emotional because if you're a mother, who wouldn't want someone to come help their child when they're hurting, right? And somehow that overcame her fear of the other religion, the idea that someone was willing to come and help her daughter when she was hurting, regardless of her religion, especially when she's on the losing side here last year. Now, what you did not hear in those two stories was that the schoolboys or the mother or the little girl in the play, none of them had to change their beliefs to feel included. All they had to do was recognize that everyone was worthy of dignity and of help. And that's the whole point. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, okay? I just got back from Iraq. Post-ISIS Iraq is still lingering with conflict and challenges. But today, there's over 2,000 teachers that are working with children all across the country that are teaching these lessons and that are transforming the culture of their classrooms of their schools, of their communities, of their families. It's not just the school children that are getting it, it's the moms and the dads and the community leaders. And when I was sitting next to this mother, or even the young boys or somebody that was a victim of the genocide, and I see their eyes light up with hope that they don't have to live that way anymore, they can actually live in peace with people who believe differently from them that they might have been afraid of before, and they don't have to go back to that. I know that if I can see what's happening, these teachers and students are proving that it's possible, even in the hardest places, for pluralism to flourish. And so that's why I know that pluralism is possible even here, for us to see the humanity of the people that we consider the other, and then to take it a step further and to consider and to recognize that our deepest differences can be vibrant points of conversation, not flashpoints for conflict. Because the truth is, conflict never begins with things that we agree on. So let's start there and agree just on this one thing, that everyone has the freedom to be who they are and to believe in the things that make life meaningful to them. Because ultimately, that's how we like to say we're hardwired. Thank you.